talked to my younger sister about this stuff, where she's like, you know, when she is done partying, she just goes home. But for me, like, I could like throw up in the back room or something, and I'm like, okay, then I'm round through. Like, I'm reset again. And a normal person doesn't do that. A normal person's like, okay, my body's telling me go the heck home. I'm like, well, actually, now I can take another shot because I just lost that last one I just took. So now I got to get back in me, not knowing that was. I mean, knowing. I didn't care.
You knew, but you didn't. You didn't care.
Yeah, I was in a party, and that was my number one thing. I wanted to, you know. Look at me, I'm here now. And it's like, all right, we see you. We see you.
I talk about, I didn't never want to leave. You know, it's like, you leaving? Why y'all leaving? Right. I didn't understand that.
Right, the party has to keep going on.
Yeah,
right?
it keeps going. It's like always, I really didn't understand let's go home concept. You know, when everybody else, they would be tired, and it's like, no, 12 o'clock, my energy just wrapped up.
Yeah, we need something that, that was how we get into the other stuff. Where one thing wasn't functioning enough, so then I had to re-supplement with something else. Yeah. And then that's how that's
take
what really
it to another level.
Yep.
Yeah,
and then I was always the one who had to keep escalating it to everything. I made an ordeal out of that stuff. Yeah, the idea of leaving the party or going home before everyone else does, that was such a foreign party concept to me. It was always like,
me too.
We're shutting this thing down.
And when the bartender, when they turn the lights on, oh my God, it's like, look, the lights just went off.
Oh my God.
It was like, why are they turning the lights off already? We just got here, you know.
I'd be losing track of time. Like, you turned the lights on at 1:59. You should have turned them on at 2. I still have one more minute
last call. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Silver Lining Nation, and today I am so excited to have Ken with us. Ken's been on the episode before, guys. I know you remember him from Black History Month, and Ken is with us again today, and so excited. Ken, tell us a little about yourself, how long you've been sober, and let's get the show on the road.
All right, Lorraine, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be part of the Silver Lining podcast. A little bit about myself. I've been sober for 2 years and almost 3 years now in a couple months. So we're getting right through this crazy time of year where I'm just, maybe a little antsy, but I'm just excited to be here and excited to help carry the message around to the whole world.
Well, we're glad to have you. So you 2 years sober. You just celebrated not too long ago, right?
It was in November.
Okay. When we said not too long ago, that can be yesterday, or it might be a whole year ago. That's how my mind works. But yeah, I've got to say, I've seen you come into the rooms, and I've seen a huge change. We see people come in, and I know now that you probably having the same experience that I had seeing you come in. You've grown so much, and the way you share in the rooms now is totally different. You're laughing. Totally different from the Ken that I met when you came in 2 years ago. So I love hearing your shares, and I love, we just left a meeting together, and we were talking about that earlier before the show started. But we were talking about showing up and being accountable. But I'm not going to make this about me. I want you to start, with what happened, what it was like, and what it's like today for you.
Absolutely. That was quite the little start there. Let me see if I can kind of gather, my thoughts on everything here. I can tell you for sure a lot of things have changed than what they were before. You mentioned that the way that I speak and talk in meetings is much differently now. When I first got into here, I was kind of a wreck. I was in a pretty toxic relationship that I was doing things that were inappropriate, and I blamed her for doing things that were inappropriate. I was drinking and drugging, she was drinking and drugging. It was just a whole mess of things. And I wasn't, behaving the way that I thought I was supposed to. Alcohol and drugs have always been a part of my life. So, I tried to move to a different city. I came to Dallas, and, my same, consequences kept following me, got in trouble with the law a lot growing up. And then, it looked like my only way to get out of it was to actually, pay attention to the program that I was in and focus on my sobriety. And, when I really started focusing on my sobriety and taking, those steps to heart, my life started to change. And it removed the things that were not going in the way that they were supposed to and started attracting the right people towards me. It got me in touch with, a guy who I follow for mentorship for everything that he does. It got me to start having better relationships with my coworkers, less, why is he getting promoted? Why is this? Why is that? Instead of just, how can I make everybody else, functionally work as a better team? So now I'm leading, right? I was desperate for, promotions, but now I'm leading people, and it just kind of came, to a forefront. And then, when we talk about meetings, I'm showing up for people who are walking in the door for the first time, right? Because for me, when I walked in, I had nothing to give. And if I can imagine what that position is like for somebody else, it's up to me to be the reaching hand for that person, because they may never get that chance again. And I was lucky enough, and I can see my life with a little bit of perspective enough that I was shaped to be in this position right here for a reason. And that reason is to be of maximum benefit to other people. And now that I see that, like, everything's becoming more clear of just, this is the way that you're supposed to do. Other people can see that I'm behaving better. They like this version of me better than they like the old one. Obviously, I used to be a menace to society, but now I'm, I'm helping as much as I've ever helped before in my life. I'm not saying like, oh, I donate $100 to this charity, whatever, but I'm being available, with my time, right? I'm not selfish with my time. I'm not, well, I don't want to do something else, so I'll do something else. I make time for other people now, and I think that's an important thing that I've learned through this whole thing so far. That's happened.
I remember one time when I think you were probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, about, was it 6 to a year sober, and you were saying you were looking for a house. How long were you sober when that was going on?
Let's see. That would have been in 2020, so that would have been the struggle of me getting sober in probably that first 6 months. That first 6 months, and it was quite the ordeal.
That's what I remember about you when you first came in. And I mean, you were so excited, and you were talking about the struggles that you were going through. You would find a house, and then someone would outbid you, blah, blah, blah. And the reason I bring this up is when we're newly sober, the things that we think that we want. And I remember you sharing about how bad you wanted that house and the struggles that you were going through. The things that I thought that I wanted when I was newly in sobriety are totally different from what I need and want now. But at the time, when you shared about not getting the house every time you would bid for it, someone else would get it, and you just wanted it.
Yeah.
And today, when I see you in the rooms, it's you're a totally different person, totally different. And I want you to share about that experience with not getting something you wanted, but the way I look at it, my higher power, if it were me, saw something different that I didn't need it at that time. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking for a home, like looking for a new place to stay. You've got all these visions in your mind about like what it's supposed to be, what it needs to be. I want 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, this, that, and I want a place for this and all this stuff. And then, you find the house, right? And then you're like, okay, well, is it in budget? Okay, it's a little up, but I can make some things work for it. And then you're doing all this stuff. You're signing things, you're applying, you got to pay the application fee, you got to do this, you got to do this. And by the time that you get home, you already told no. And I'm like, damn, I thought I did everything right, though. I did all this stuff. And then you're like, okay, let me just refresh again. And maybe it's not the right one. And then you do the whole process again. And then it's no again. And you're like, damn, like, what did I do this time? And then now I'm being like, maybe it's my credit. Maybe I don't like this. Maybe I don't like that. And then so maybe I got to do a different bank. And I'm thinking about all these things in my head instead of the real fact of the matter is that wasn't the right house for me, you know, and it wasn't the right house until the right house came across, you know. At the time I had 2 dogs, right? And I was, you know, looking for, you know, a house that had a fence and all this kind of stuff. And I was getting told no at all these places, right? And then the house that I ended up eventually getting, it had the doggy door, it had this, it had that, it had the space. I didn't even like picture in my mind of what this house was, but it just came right at the perfect time and like right when I needed it. And then instead of me wanting to check this box and this box to make sure all this, it just kind of just fell into place. And I didn't really have to do anything for this one. Like, you know, the idea of the things that I wanted when I first like got sober, just like a good job, a nice car, the law to get off my tail, and you know, having to get my paper signed and all this stuff, and all this like was so minor compared to like what has been gifted to me over time. You know, like everything that I thought that I was so desperately needing for and I prayed for, I got, but then even I got so much grander after it. You know, the idea of repairing the relationship I had with my family. You know, this is stuff that's been years in the belly of just like, oh, I'm never going to talk to that person ever again because of this. And that thing only happened to me one time in my entire life, but I've replayed it in my head so many times that like, I'm going to get revenge on this person. You know, these things that I'm looking at my life now is completely turned around. And, you know, I owe it to the whole thing, you know, for putting me in that position for sure.
Yeah, I call it when you first come in the room, your mind's in this fog, and you really can't see until you start clearing up, and things become more clear, and some of those things that you thought you want, like we said, it just looked totally different. And even the people that we harmed and thought that we would never ever. I'm never going to say I'm sorry because of what you did this to me. So, like step 4, it was justified. Yeah. What was your experience with working step 4, where there perhaps was someone on that list that had harmed you, and you didn't feel that, you know, you owed them an amends, or you needed to even put them on the list?
Right, you know, when my sponsor, you know, worked those steps with me, he made it clear. He just said, just do it one column by a time. He said, you know, people, places, and institutions, right? Who are the people that are making you upset? Just list their names. List their names. What are the places? Well, this happened to me back in 7th grade. This happened to me back in high school. This happened to me in my current job. You know, institutions. Well, I don't like the government. I don't like the police. I don't like this. And then, like, I started going through that whole list. And then we went through the next column. And then we went to the next column. Then we went to the next column. And then, you know, by the time that I was sitting there and I'd gone through quite this list, and I was like, I'm ready to go. And then he asked me, is there anything else? You know, because he made it clear that this is something that people struggle the most with. By leaving something off on this piece of paper is going to end up causing me to go back into my old habits again. And I could not forget how broken and how messed up I was before I got there, right? So I needed to go ahead and go through this process. Well, he made it clear I needed to go through this process. So I was hesitant of that. And I remember this is, maybe you call it a profound miracle or something, but I lived pretty near the group, about a block or two away. There was a massive, humongous apartment fire. And I remember, you know, I was not being able to write some stuff down. I was like, I don't want to, you know, maybe this. And then that fire happened, all these fire trucks are going, and I'm seeing like all these people of like, you know, looking at their homes like burning down. And I just kept thinking, I'm like, you can't write something down on a piece of paper, and you're seeing all these people like lose of their things right now and seeing that pain and emotion on your face. You can't, it was some sort of spiritual moment or something there that had me you need to do some work on this, because there's no excuse that you can still have your home just as easy as they lost doors, and you can't get this crap out of you from like years ago and then write it down on the same guy who said, call me every day, and you've been calling him, like the least you can do is keep doing the stuff. And then I just kept doing the stuff. And then that was just something that I had to put everything down there. And, you know, sometimes even still I do, you know, step work with my sponsees, and then I have to do it myself as well. And I take it back to my sponsor again and tell him, I'm like, hey, you know, this stuff is still bothering me. Like, why is it bothering me? And he's like, well, you haven't let it go. You haven't done the next step. You know, you haven't made the amends about this. And it's just like, the sooner that I do the stuff that's necessary, the quicker it is to get me back to being sane, right? Get me back to thinking clearly again. So I can, again, you know, be as beneficial to other people. Because when I'm sitting on myself and being like, I'm going to get this guy again, right? I can't do the stuff I'm supposed to be doing anymore.
You mentioned insanity. When you came in the 12-step program, did that mean the same to you as it does to you today?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the easiest way for me to understand, you know, insanity is just you doing the same thing over and over again, but you think something different is going to happen, right? And, you know, for me, I had a problem with stopping using drinking and alcohol or drinking and drugging. I had a problem doing it. And I would tell myself, well, you know, last weekend, I'm going to go easy this weekend, right? So then next weekend would roll around and I would tell myself, you know, I'm not going to go to the bars. I'm going to buy my own liquor this time. So I bought my own liquor and then throw my own little party at my house. And I spent more money buying the party at my house than I would have spent at the bar. Right? I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. Now I'm going to be, you know, social again. Then I'm like social and hanging out with my friends. We're splitting drinks. But then I need to go ahead and buy shots for everybody, right? So then I got to go and spend more money again. And then the same things keep happening again. I'm spending all my money. I'm keeping this party action going, and I can't stop doing it. And then that leads me into other substances. It's just like, you know, my body's quitting on me. Then I got to try this thing to go keep me going, right? And then, you know, before you know it, my whole check is spent again, you know, payday's coming up, you know, not payday, due day, bill day is coming up, right? And then now I have to, I got to tell my, you know, landlord that things aren't, you know, my credit card got stolen, so it's going to take me a while to make this payment. I got to switch this over. Someone owes me money for this. And then, I'm already starting it off, and I'm still recovering from the last weekend. And I would do that over and over and over again. And when it kind of clicked for me for a while, I was in a meeting, and then someone told me, like, I think the saying was that, you know, one drink is too many, but like 1,000 drinks is never enough. And I remember, like, when I heard that, I had an apartment that was over all the bars, right? Because I told myself,
what a cool place to live.
Right. I'll never get a DWI again because I don't need to drive to the bars. I'll just walk downstairs, right? So I would every day walking up and downstairs drinking, right? So I remember I was day drinking like one day, right? And I was like, got smashed, and I went to bed at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I woke up and it was like, I don't know, like 12:59, you know, in the morning, you know, a.m. And I'm like, you know what, I still have 1 more hour. I can go back downstairs again and get me another fill again. And, you know, that was my thing where it's like I could drink all day long, pass out, get my fill, wake up. And I'm like, you know what, I could use a drink right now. And that was constantly my life. And I thought that was a sane way to live. I thought normal people did that. You know, I thought, well, if I can't stop drinking and driving, I'll just not drive, but I'll drink every day still. Not knowing the solution to the whole thing was to maybe stop drinking. You mentioned in a meeting in the past about being able to manage, and you mentioned that you thought you were managing because, you know, the way your life was structured, you are managing. Let's talk about that. Why did you think that before you came into the 12-step program? Well, I thought that because I had made an illusion in my mind that this was an okay way to live. And it was delusional, right? I had spin me up this perception and this persona that, like, you know, as long as the vampire that's, you know, inside of me, the alcohol demon, is managed to, like, only during the night or only on tequila Tuesdays and Thursdays, you know. But as long as I can function, you know, going to work and all this thing, everything looks fine. But on the reality of it is that, you know, my bills were always stacked up. I was lying to the people close to me. I was completely isolating. I wasn't telling people the truth. And even scary, I wasn't even telling the truth to myself because I was believing the lie I was telling myself. So the unmanageable part of it was that I thought that I could control other people, and I could lie, cheat, and steal to those people in a way that would make me get what I wanted, which would basically mean I want to drink and drug or do whatever I want, and I don't want you to tell me no. And that was it. That was pretty much my modus to operate for everything, right? And then so, because those were my focuses, that was my priority, I would do damn the consequences to make sure those things would happen. So, you know, I would, if I couldn't drive my car, right? Remember, they had to install a blower device in my car. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Instead of stopping drinking and driving, I would, you know, ride my bike miles in Texas heat, you know, to go pick up something. Right? Or go to this store. Or go to a different liquor store across town, because I don't want them seeing, well, hey, he was here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Why is he coming here again on Sunday? You know, I would think to myself, well, they care about that, so I got to make sure I go to the other part of town, right? And then, you know, I would start that whole relationship with that person, you know, and I would do that for all sorts of bizarre, weird things. That was such a spectacle that if I would look at it from outside of being in that lie I was telling myself, I'm like, this is, normal people aren't like this. This isn't the way to live.
They're not riding a bike in the Texas heat.
Right.
Yeah. So did you ride the bike because you couldn't blow?
Well, I was probably had drunk the night before. And I knew that if I had blown into my car, they would definitely take my car this time. Because the consequences, I knew I didn't want to lose my car, but I didn't want to stop the drinking though.
Yeah.
So obviously, I would rather buy a bicycle and ride it 7 to 8 miles in the Texas heat than it is for me to, you know, maybe lose my car again, or maybe just like drink water and stay inside the house. I never thought
about the bike thing. I'm glad I didn't think about that.
I did the bike, I walked, I did the bus, you know, I did all sorts of crazy things to pick something up. And, you know, I don't make the ordeal out of it anymore, where it's like, I can just steal. And even then, I would still be, look at all these people in their cars and all this stuff going to work. Yeah. And me on a, you know, Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have nothing to do with myself. I've
got the bus from North Dallas all the way to South Dallas.
I've taken 2 buses before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I had to sit
now today I'm so lazy. It's like, what if you tell me to do something like that? Are you kidding? Take a bus? You know, not just taking a bus to do, you know, to do that distance. You know, it's like I'm lazy.
Yeah.
You know, but the disease of the alcoholic
makes you motivated.
That's
why they say, like, we have the craziest, like, drive and motivation where they're like, oh, you need to get your willpower fixed or something. That way you'll stop. I'm like, it's not a willpower thing. Trust us. If we want to willpower something, we'll go all the way for it. You know, someone tells me, you know, you can't, you know, jump out of a plane. I'm like, all right, well,
let's see.
I'll try it out.
It's crazy the way the mind, and you know, it's, we talk about this a lot on Silver Lining Nation, the functional alcoholic, a lot of us. So you're not only alcoholic, you're an addict, and I know we put those things together, but when I came into recovery, back in the day, it was you were either addict or you're an alcoholic. And I came in and I thought that I was an addict. Did you have that experience, or did you automatically know what category you fell into?
You know, when I felt that I was an addict because I was getting in trouble for things that were illegal, right? But for me, the justification in my mind was that, well, alcohol is legal. So, you know, even if I'm getting in trouble for these other things, it's not like the same thing when it came to alcohol. So that was one thing that had me justifying it a lot. So I didn't see myself as like a problem drinker or like an alcoholic, even though the same consequences that I have now seen in other alcoholics and other people's experiences were happening in my life too. So one, I had to, at least for me, the idea was, I have to be 100% sober. I can't do, I'm just going to be working an alcoholic program or working a narcotics problem. It had to be a full suite kind of thing. And, you know, so this program really worked for me to kind of get all of that stuff to the surface and then have me come to terms of who I am, which I think honestly is the most important part of this whole thing, is like, what was I so scared of? What were those secrets I was hiding? Is that, I felt shame that I wasn't being the person who I was supposed to be. And, a higher power is the one that's guiding me to do that. And so as soon as those things became clear to me, it didn't matter if I called myself an addict or an alcoholic, because the true result of it is that I am really selfish, and I'm dragging and missing out on life because I'm so focused on getting my fix or getting things my way or doing it. It's my way or the highway, and all the consequences that came with.
In our group, I'm seeing a lot of Black guys that are in recovery, and that was not a norm when I first came in. But sticking around is another thing. So why do you think that's the case with any group? I can go to a variety of group. We just went to Denver, and I didn't see a lot of Blacks in Denver. So there's not a lot of our people.
Yeah.
So why do you think that's the case?
At least in my family, and at least the way of growing up, was that a lot of problems were supposed to stay in the family, right? You weren't supposed to let the outside world know what's going on in the household, kind of thing. So the idea to get help, or the idea to go to rehab, or the idea to go to a treatment center or whatever, is already pretty highly stigmatized. You need to, at least in my family, it was like, you need to just go to church more, and then you'll get it. And honestly, that was why I wasn't getting it, right? Exactly. So I had to find a different perspective. And then, at least for my family, this has been a history of drugs and alcohol systemically, from fathers to sons to all that kind of stuff. So it becomes like I'm trying to fight it, but also like I don't want my own family to know what's going on. So then that's where the lying starts coming in, the deception side of things, where it's like, all right, I won't tell my family what's going on. And then, if you finally do get the courage or the, gift of desperation to go to a treatment center, you don't want to let your family know, because if you do fall short, you don't want them thinking, well, there he goes again. He's messing up again and he can't get it together. Because you feel that shame, even though honestly, if people see that you're going to treatment, they're with you. And that was such it seems like an obvious thing to say, but when you're in that before recovery state, you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking that like maybe me getting sober is the best thing that's ever going to happen to me, because you're not seeing that. You're just like, well, I have no other options. And then like, well, if I keep messing up again, they're never going to take me back now because I've done all this damage, So, at least in my case, it's maybe that fear that they don't want to be seen messing up again, or they don't want to be seen getting help, or I'm supposed to be, a Black
strong,
man.
And I'm supposed to be strong, and I'm not supposed to cry. And,
right.
And we, in the rooms, we hear a lot. I hear a lot of the guys say, especially when they work step 3, that they cried when they did that step. And when I'm looking around the rooms when a lot of people, I forgot what day they come, but they come from the recovery. And it's called a recovery van or whatever. And I'm looking around the rooms to get the expression on their faces. Do you ever notice anything like that? To see how do they accept that when the men are saying that they cried?
Yeah.
I'm always curious as to how our brothers would look at that, and whether or not that's something that will push them away from doing the 12 steps. Do you ever think about that?
Whenever I worked step 3 with my sponsor, right? We were at his house, and this crazy old guy, right? So he has like incense and sage
Yeah,
smelling
I know
all
him.
around the house, right? So I'm like going into his office. I'm like, what the heck is going to happen? And then, we do a prayer, and it wasn't the prayer, but we did a prayer before the prayer, right? And then, we talked about it for a little bit. And he says, all right, just go home and have your thoughts, right? And then, so I remember I was walking my dog that night, and then I was at this little park, and this park had this little monument to it. It was like a little red and black monument. And it pointed right between these two buildings that was straight up, and the moon was right there. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, you know what, I'm the only one right here, right now that can see this exactly as it is. And it was just like, why can't I have like, a personal relationship the same way that I can have like an intimate moment of just being right here, right now. And then just things like that started clicking to me. And then, so that got emotional for me. So I wasn't emotional in the moment, but understanding like what that step meant to me at that time, even so, I mean, I was like 3 months into sobriety, so I really didn't know what was coming. But even then, like that was an emotional moment for me. And then, so whenever I think about, if someone is maybe fearful to come into their emotions or wanting to just like, I'm a tough guy, I don't cry. I'm like, I got you. Like, it's all right. Like, it's okay to be that way, because this will illuminate a lot of stuff for you. And, the only thing that you can honestly tell this person is just like, all right, then you done step 3, so let's go to step 4.
Yes.
The least I can do is being like, well, if I've done this part of it, the next part of it is to continue the program, right? Don't dwell too much on what I did.
Yes.
Just say, all right, next. Yes, please.
I like that answer. Because when I'm working with someone, and if they're, pulling back, like, I'm not going to do that part, I just say, you know what? I believe so. My belief in this program is so strong. And if you stick with it, you're going to get it. So all those little holes will be filled in without you having anything to do with it. And that's the faith that I have in this program. And I've seen it happen over and over again. So that's how I look at that. And I love your answer to that when you saw the moon. And it's like everyone has to have their own experience. But if you stick with it, and you got to unlearn everything that you thought you knew, that's an example of it. So I love the answer that you gave. It's not about being, I'm hard and I'm like, it's not about any of those things, Because we might have a hard exterior, but there's a lot of softness in there. And the crazy thing, like we talk about, the people that you see in meetings may not be who you think they are, right? Where it's like, some of my friends now ride Harley Davidson motorcycles at the meetings. They're smoking 18 cigarettes. I'm like, I can call that person anytime I want to. And they'll be at my house within like minutes. And they're like, the people who I thought would wear the suits and this, that, like, they'll get back to me eventually. You know what I mean? Like, you think were going to be the people you would gel with are not. And the people who I gel with now don't seem like those people. But that you would be with. But they really are the people who I get the most out of. Because whether I could judge a book by its cover or not, like, I get the softness in there that, a life of, craziness that we can all identify with has now put us together with. A group of people who would normally not mix. That's who we are. And I love, that's one of my favorite saying too. It's like, just stick around and the miracles will continue to come. And I love when those little cheesy things that cliches. So those are the things that the longer I'm sober, they used to say, the old timers would say, I called alcoholism when I came in here. I know what that means now. And it sticks with you eventually. The longer you stick around. I've heard that. So have you had a relapse? You've only had one. Amazing. So real quick, and I'm going to ask you this. You mentioned that you've had DWIs. How many DWIs have you had?
I had 2.
2. I got you.
You got BB. You high roller.
Woo, 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 woo.
Right.
So was your experience bad when you got stopped? How was that?
Well, The circumstances of me getting my second DWI were significantly not as glorious as my first one. You know, the second one was, you know, I was quite the mess. And you know, they always say the second one is way more troublesome than the first one. So the first one had me, you know, pay thousands of dollars, legal fees, all sorts of stuff, community service, all that. But they let me keep my car, which was nice, and I didn't have to, you know, do all this other stuff. The second time, they took my car for a while. They made me do jail time. They made me pay a bunch of money. I also had to hire a lawyer. I also had to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of community service. And all of this started to peak during the first year of COVID. So I was desperate to get community service hours at the same time that nobody was in business.
Yeah,
so,
that's hard.
You know, I also had to, you know, get a paper sign and all sorts of stuff. I also had to drive from, not drive, I had to go to, you know, this probation office, and he only said he's going to do voice meetings anymore. It was a crazy, crazy time. And I mean, I just... Yeah, it was, but
quite an
damn
experience.
The consequences. Like, even all of those things were happening. That still wasn't the reason I stopped drinking. Like, I didn't stop drinking because I got DWIs. I stopped drinking because my life got crazy enough that I, you know, I had to go really crazy. And, you know, that was what really, you know, turned my life around. But, you know, it didn't matter. I would have got more DWIs. I probably would have had to be beaten if my life didn't get to that crazy point that it got to before I got finally sober.
So when you came into the 12 steps, were you ordered to come in there? So you were ordered in after you finished, you decide to stay? Was it something that, oh, well, I think I am one of them? Was it that experience?
It was, honestly, I was getting a piece of paper signed so I could get a probation officer or a judge to get off my back. And they said, go to these meetings, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, whatever, fine, I'll go. And I would get my thing signed. And I would, you know, I remember I got one desire chip during that time. I never got monthlies. I never checked in for the monthlies because I wasn't being sober at the same time either. When I actually got my for real sober chip, and then I never drank again after that, you know, me and my fiance at the time, we were both together, and we got into the fight of all fights, right? This is the one, right? And then so, you know, I pack a bag and I load up my suitcase and I'm like walking to the hotel room. And I remember before I left the apartment, I packed like, you know, a bag of all my stuff, right? So I had my narcotics bag, I had this, and then I had a big old water bottle, and I was like, you know, let me just pour all the Tito's in there. So I poured this whole thing of vodka in there, right? Because I didn't want people seeing me drinking vodka on the street, right? So I'm just drinking a water bottle, right? And you know, I'm going to this hotel room, and I'm completely smashed. I'm surprised the guy even let me check in. But let me check in, and then I'm in this hotel room, and I'm yelling up a storm. And, you know, I remember I was writing something down, and I was like, you know, you guys made me this, you made me that, this is the whole reason this is like this, yada, 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 pour me on the victim, right? And then, you know, bag of pills I had, I took those, and then I drank the rest of that vodka. And I remember I woke up the next day, which was a miracle in itself, and I got to see what I had written down. And, you know, I woke up that next day, and then that was the last day I ever drank. And that day I called a couple people. And my fiance at that time, she was actually going to go to Maggie's house that evening.
Was she going to go there to live? Okay.
Get sober as well.
Awesome.
So I dropped her off at Maggie's, and I remember I was like, you know what, if I can drop her off here, maybe I should go to a meeting. Right? And that was the time that I actually got a for real desire trip. I met my sponsor that day, and, you know, I never drank after that. And, you know, our lives made different choices at that point, but even then, that was the catalyst that it took for me to actually turn my life around.
Awesome.
But it wasn't the courts, though. If the courts had their way, I'd probably still be in the streets.
Yeah, I love that story because we get a lot of people that come in. Court system don't know what to do with us, so they send anybody to recovery because it's like, oh, just send them there. It's a really joke for us, you know that. But yeah, I really enjoyed chatting with you. I mean, thank you so much, and thank you for going into more details on this one.
I always love to go into details. I always like being on this podcast. And
thank you.
Sharing the message to a global, worldwide audience.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. So we're going to wrap it up. And wow. And like I said, Tam really, my producer really wants you on it. She was like him, invite him. So I'm like, let me ask. And you like, yes. So thank you. Thank you again.
No, thank you for having me. This has always been a pleasure. Have me on again.
Oh, you will.
Okay.
You'll be back.
I'll be back on again. Keep the questions coming. Keep the thought process going, because we do this to help others, right?
Yes.
To pass this message along as best we can, and if my crazy stories of the things I've done maybe helps one person, right? One person. That's
my thing. If one podcast can help one individual, man, we're winning. We're winning.
We'll help every single one.
Yeah, that's one person. Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. And thank you so much for, watching another episode. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed chatting with Ken here. So once again, if nobody tells you guys today, heard from us here at Silver Lining, we love you.
This is David Williams. Y'all heard it here first. Keep watching, and y'all better subscribe to Silver Lining Nation. And if you're on YouTube, click that bell for notifications. It really helps the channel.
All right. That was so much fun. Oh,
thank
my
you
goodness.
so much. You're amazing.
That was fun.
You're amazing.
These lights were bright today. I was like, all right.
I feel like I'm really being a movie star.
I'm saying, this felt like I was on the Today Show or something like that. I didn't have...